You are listening to Very Long Audio Beyond the Robot, Session 6 of 12 from his 9-day event on the Gold Coast, March 2000. For more information, visit barrylong.org.
We are fundamentally robots. We find that very difficult to accept, but it is the truth that fundamentally we are electrical robots, just like the computers that we use. The only thing is that it is a miracle of the constitution of our bodies and our systems that there is a self-consciousness in it, which is robotic. That's why most of us behave the same way most of the time, because that's what robots do. But inside of it also, inside of each one of us, is this light of consciousness behind the robot, or the very intelligence of the robot, which comes from deep within. You could say it comes from outer space, because that would be the thing that all the UFO people would try to say, but it's not true. It comes from inner space, for there is no outer space in truth. That's created by the robot, this wonderful, extraordinary machine that we are. But in inner space, that's where our reality comes from, that's where our intelligence comes from, and the intelligence breaks down as it becomes unconscious. And by the time it gets into the robotic bodies, it is completely unconscious. And so we behave like robots. We make the same mistakes over and over in our experience. We weep about the same things. We become attached to the same things with a bit of variation. We have broken hearts. We make the same errors in our love relationships, and we give in to greed and ambition and wanting and trying, which are all robotic reactions to the world outside of us, which is also created by the robot. The one way of escape from being robotic is to retrace from the robot here, to be able to retrace the intelligence that's in the robot, to follow that line of intelligence down to where it comes from, in deep inner space. But that's very difficult for a robot, because a robot must continue to behave robotically like the whole world outside there is doing most of the time. What happens, what is built into this magnificent machine, is that with experience, which you cannot avoid because as soon as you're born, you're starting to undergo experience. With experience, you start to not need the same experiences. Okay, with experience, you start to react like a robot, that the good ones, the good experiences, you want to repeat, and not so good experiences you want to avoid. And so that becomes a way of robotically directing your life towards that which you think you enjoy and away from that which you don't enjoy. And that, of course, is robotic. And that's giving in to likes and dislikes, which is another robotic thing. So, generally speaking, from the time we're born, we are robotic. And in the first, say, 20, 30 years of our existence, we are learning to experience so that we won't have to experience. Because the reactions to experience are fundamentally robotic. And the idea is to become more intelligent is to become more conscious. And to become more conscious means that I do not need this experience again. And that brings us down to emotions. Because emotions and feelings are the most robotic part of this magnificent machine which keeps us tied to robotic behaviour until such times as we reach a deeper level of intelligence within ourselves which says, no, I'm not going to be directed anymore by these robotic emotions and feelings, for instance. Now, the whole human race out there lives off its feelings, its emotions. And I suspect that most of the people here also still, to some degree or other, still live off their feelings and make decisions from their feelings, particularly in their love lives. Now, you have to understand, if you're going to receive what I'm saying, you have to understand that feelings are emotions. Emotions are a feeling. There are no such thing as a good emotion, and there is no such thing as a good feeling, because they're both the same. Now, when I say there's no such thing as a good feeling, let's get it straight what that means. A feeling is of the body, real feeling. When we talk about feeling, I kick my toe, that's a real feeling, and it hurts, right? That's a real feeling. When I afterwards start to think about kicking my toe and how I'll have to buy a new pair of shoes, or what if they have to get the toe amputated and all that, this then creates an artificial feeling, which is not a real feeling, because the kicking of the toe was real, but the other feeling is an ingested, an unreal feeling from my emotions, my thought patterns, my mentality, which is robotic. Our mentality is purely robotic, and our intellectuality is completely robotic too. So we've got two sorts of feelings. One is real, such as a pain in the stomach that is due to, let's say, a burst appendix, is a real feeling. A pain in the stomach that's due to the fact that your lover left you is not a real feeling at all. It's an induced feeling. It's an artificial feeling, an invented feeling, invented by your robotic self, so that you will keep getting feelings of being alive, because the robot cannot relate directly to the feeling, to the reality, the real feeling of being alive. The robot can't do that because it's too busy reacting robotically to external circumstances to be here now where life is. That is, in the senses. The robot cannot be in the senses. It's always feeling some response from what the senses are seeing. It's not in the senses. So people get their feelings mixed up. They cannot identify between a real feeling, such as hunger. Hunger is a real feeling which is in the system, programmed naturally for the body to be sustained here by the necessity for food or water, thirst. They're real feelings. But when you say you feel hungry, it's not a good idea. It's a good idea to get rid of that word feel hungry. It's best to say, and teach your children to say, I am hungry. But we can't help but introduce the word feel in, because that's our very robotic nature, is to feel everything. So it's a good idea not to say you feel hungry or to feel like anything. Say it straight. I'm hungry. I'm in pain. As much as you can. This is an attempt to disidentify with false feelings which come from your emotions and your emotional self. Your disappointments, unhappiness, frustrations. So the object is to become more intelligent, because the robot has an intelligence in it. Like the computer, which is a robot, has an intelligence that comes through it in the form of electricity. But electricity is not intelligence itself. Electricity is the production of intelligence, but it's not intelligence itself. So it's a phony sort of representation of intelligence, and it becomes like God in the world, because if we suddenly had to switch off all the electricity in the world, the whole world would be in chaos, wouldn't it? Because it's like a sort of a God that's running all the computers. So electricity is God, more and more. You know, by the evolution of things, electricity is becoming more and more God. That means they're responsible for everything. And as it does, we become more robotic, because we start to serve the robots that we've built. And a robot can only build a robot. You see, only pure intelligence can build something that's not robotic, but a robot, anything it invents, is robotic. Like all the computers are robotics, they're made by us. They're not natural, they're made by us. And all the cars are computers of some description made by us. So we robots build robots. Now the thing is to get beyond the robot that we are. And that's where the spiritual life begins. After time, you can't help, when you're a child, you can't help being robotic. When you're a teenager, you can't help being robotic. When you're a young boy or girl and coming up into your 20s, you still can't help being robotic in your 20s. You're robotic and that's it. Although you can have a sense of something that is within, don't worry, the robot's going to keep running you, and you're going to keep running according to what the robot is already programmed to do. That is, according to your karma will overwhelm you, and you will be forced to go in that direction robotically. And sometimes inside you will feel, I don't want this. Like they say, stop the world, I want to get off. But you can't stop the world, you can't get off. You've got to keep going until you become intelligent enough to give up your robotic reactions and your robotic feelings. Because that's the beginning of consciousness, which is the beginning of intelligence. Because we are intelligence, because we have this spark of creative intelligence inside of us, it is that creative intelligence that gives the appearance that the robot is intelligent, that the human mind is intelligent, that the intellectual person is intelligent, that the person who can remember all those things on quiz shows, who's got a good memory, that they're intelligent. And of course they're not intelligent, they're just robotic. They've got the computerized thing working in that particular body. They've got a good memory. Another one's got another computerized thing working. They've got something that's good. An intellectual. I read that David Bohm had the scientist, the famous nuclear scientist who died a few years ago. I read yesterday, and something someone sent me, that he had a massive, a magnificent intellect. Well, David Bohm asked to come and see me 10 years ago or something. He asked to come and see me and talk about time. So over he came, and we talked for 2 hours at my home in London. And I didn't see any evidence of a magnificent intellect at all. But of course intellects see magnificent intellects because intellects are unintelligent unless they have the knowledge of God. David Bohm had a certain receptivity and a certain knowledge of things, but it was all based on scientific language and scientific thought. So it sort of paralleled spiritual knowledge, but it's only a reflection, because there's no intelligence in it. No real intelligence was the knowledge of God. So it must have made some impression on him, because 2 weeks later he rang up again and said, "Can I come over again? This is one of these great intellects, you know, in the whole the whole of the history of Neil Bohr and all these guys. He phones up and says, "Can I come and see you again?" So he comes again, and we talk about time and eternity, which was very interesting to him. He wanted to hear about this. So, but you never heard about that from him, did you? No. So his great intellect was not that great, only great in the scientific world where they deal in foreign language and they've got nothing human in it because it doesn't apply to his wife. You know, anything that doesn't apply to a man's wife is robotic. So massive intellects, you know, the place over here, I should think, with all the professors, is filled with massive intellects. But intellect is part of the robotic. Mental, our ability to be mental, is robotic. The only thing that counts is pure intelligence. But because there's pure intelligence in us, it degenerates as it comes down into the body. It degenerates into mind, the movement of mind, which is then called intelligent. Well, the mind is not intelligent. It has a phantom intelligence which is reflected from the pure intelligence that's in us. But we get attached or believe in the phantom intelligence, which is our minds. Where I tell you that anything your mind ever thought of or ever will think of is rubbish. Now that's quite a statement, isn't it? That's because it's not intelligent. So you can forget anything you ever thought of, or ever want to think of, and you could go out for 10 years and it wouldn't matter that much. And you can come back in 10 years. Wouldn't matter that you hadn't thought for 10 years at all. Probably did you the world of good. So nothing you can think of is of value. Are you listening to me? Because thought is not intelligent. Thinking is not intelligent. The only intelligence is to realize where I come from. Where I come from this very moment, immediately now, where I am coming from. And I am coming from the other, which is deep down inside me. That's where my pure intelligence comes from. And I'm talking about the body listening to these words. Where your mind comes from is a copy, a phantom, a reflection of a form of intelligence called the mind. And it's not intelligent, and the more you study, the more you become unintelligent. The more you learn at the university, the more you become unintelligent. The more you learn that men have learned in science or anything, the more unintelligent you become. Now, isn't that remarkable? The only thing is that learning has a place in the robotic world. And we are all in the robotic world. So, in the robotic world, as it evolves today, we have to go to school, we have to study, we have to learn robotic subjects, we have to learn everything that is not real, which according to where we have to go. So that's not to say that you should not go to university or you should not learn. But you should know that the more you learn, the more unhappy you become. The more there is to think about, the more there is to fear, particularly examinations, when you will be terrified that you don't pass and all the repercussions of that. And then you will have a good celebration when you do pass with lots of booze or something else which is quite unintelligent. So you'll be robotic to celebrate all your successes and to mourn all your failures, right? That is robotic. So the only intelligence is to start to discover the line of intelligence that comes from the other down inside you into this robot and allows the robot to actually appear to be alive. And you only do that when you have had a certain amount of experience, and you have suffered as a result of your experience. Anyone who has not suffered as a result of experience finds it extremely difficult to make the turn around, to go back into your own intelligence, back into your own willing to the source of your intelligence in the other. But that's what experience is for, because everybody has to suffer. Nobody escapes. You can think that somebody with $1 million or something has got a good life. Don't worry, there's always suffering for them. There's always their children they're attached to that die. There's always their companies that fail. They go to jail. They're sick. They've got something inside of them that's a problem that you never hear about. Nobody escapes. But the thing is that brings us more and more out of our intellectuality and out of our mentality to say, well, what's it about? What's it about? That's the best question anyone ever asked. What's it about? The trouble is that the human mind, like science, comes in and gives an answer. Well, it's about the Big Bang Theory, it's about Einstein's theory and all this rubbish, and it's not about that at all. That's part of the robotic evolution. So I'm talking about what you're endeavouring to do, and the secret of it is to not need the same experience again that has caused you unhappiness or problems. I'll say that again. To not need again and not go into the same experience again that has caused you to be unhappy and disturbed. It's twice enough for me to say that, or you're going to go into it again. You're going to have the same experience again. Well, that's what we do. We're still robotic, and so we go in and we have another go. This will be different this time. It won't be any different this time. Why? Because you're still robotic. You're still hoping and wishing instead of looking. Now, when you look, is the first sign of intelligence is to look. And not to look out into the external in that sense that science is always looking out beyond themselves, into objects, but to look inside and see, well, what is right or what is true here in this situation? What is right? What is true for me here? That's the beginning of intelligence.